My husband mistook my silence for submission. He assumed that the woman waiting at home, the one who smelled like hospital disinfectant and exhaustion after 12-hour shifts, was too tired to notice the tectonic shifts in our bank account. He thought my fatigue made me blind. He was wrong. While he was out playing corporate conqueror and buying diamond earrings for a subordinate half his age, I wasn't sleeping. I was wide awake, staring at the ceiling, building a coffin for his career, one bank statement at a time. He didn't know it yet, but he had already lost everything. He just hadn't received the memo. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. You know that specific kind of exhaustion that settles into your bones after 3 days of working in the emergency room? It's not just being tired. It is a physical weight, like wearing a lead apron that you can never take off. That was me on November 8th. I walked through the front door of our Craftsman home in southeast Portland, kicked off my nursing clogs, and practically melted into the floorboards. The house was quiet, too quiet. It smelled like stale coffee and the lingering ghost of the air freshener Carter insisted we use, something called Ocean Breeze, which actually just smelled like chemicals and regret. I did what I always do when I get home. It's a ritual, a grounding technique. Some people do yoga. I checked the financial hygiene of my marriage. I pulled out my phone, the screen brightness stinging my tired eyes, and opened our joint banking app. I'm the one who handles the money. I have to be. Carter, my husband of 9 years, views a budget as a vague suggestion rather than a mathematical reality. If it were up to him, we would be living in a cardboard box. But a cardboard box with a very expensive surround sound system. I scrolled through the transactions, my brain on autopilot. Gas station, grocery store, the electric bill. And then my thumb stopped. It hovered over a line item that made absolutely no sense. Tiffany and Company, $890. I stared at the words. I actually blinked, thinking maybe the exhaustion was causing hallucinations. I rubbed my eyes and looked again. It was still there. $890 spent at a jewelry store that sells things in little blue boxes that every woman recognizes from 50 paces away. My heart did this strange little flip. It wasn't fear, not yet. It was something closer to confusion mixed with a sudden, sharp spike of adrenaline. It felt like missing a step on a staircase in the dark. Our 10th anniversary was coming up next month, in December. My brain immediately started trying to connect the dots. Was this for me? Was Carter, the man who once bought me a car vacuum for my birthday because cleanliness is a gift, actually planning a romantic gesture? I sat down at the kitchen island, still in my scrubs. The granite felt cold under my forearms. I tried to picture Carter walking into Tiffany's. He would look out of place, uncomfortable among the glass cases and hushed tones. He's a consultant, a man of spreadsheets and synergy, not a man of diamonds and platinum. I felt a smile tugging at the corner of my mouth, a stupid, naive little smile. I thought, maybe he's finally growing up. Maybe he finally realizes what a decade of marriage is worth. I felt a sudden surge of affection for him, which makes me want to vomit now, looking back. I imagined him hiding the box in his sock drawer, waiting for the right moment. I thought about how I should act surprised. I should probably buy a new dress. I should make an effort. But then I looked at the date on the transaction again. Today. He was supposed to be in a meeting in Vancouver. Why was he shopping for jewelry in the middle of a workday? "Stop it," I whispered to the empty kitchen. My voice sounded loud in the silence. "Don't overthink it. Just accept the nice thing." But the nurse in me, the part of me trained to look for symptoms, to notice when a pulse is thready or a pupil is blown, couldn't just let it go. There was a discrepancy here, a variable that didn't fit the clinical picture of my husband, but I pushed it down. I closed the app. I stood up and decided to take a shower, to wash off the hospital smell and the creeping suspicion that something was very, very wrong. The problem with suspicion is that it's like a loose thread on a sweater. You pull it once just to see, and suddenly you're standing there holding a pile of yarn and you're half naked. Over the next 48 hours, I pulled that thread until my fingers bled. I found myself staring at Carter while he slept. He looked so peaceful, his mouth slightly open, a little bit of drool on the pillowcase. How could a man sleeping like a golden retriever be harboring secrets? It didn't track. I went into the overthinking engine. This is a place I visit often. It's a mental room with whiteboard walls where I map out every possible scenario, no matter how ridiculous. Theory 1. He bought me earrings. Probability, low. Carter thinks spending more than $50 on something that doesn't plug into a wall is a waste of resources. Evidence against, the Costco incident of 2018. For Valentine's Day, he presented me with a gift basket. Not a nice one from a boutique. A shrink-wrapped monstrosity from Costco containing a 3-pound log of summer sausage, a block of cheese that didn't require refrigeration, and a bag of mixed nuts. He had looked so proud. It has protein, Evelyn. Practical. I remembered sitting there with that sausage log in my lap, trying not to cry, wondering if this was it, if this was the peak of romance for the rest of my life. A man who thinks processed meat is a love language doesn't suddenly pivot to Tiffany and Company without a catalyst. Theory 2. He bought it for his mother. Probability, moderate. Donna, my mother-in-law, is a woman who demands tribute. She treats her sons like disciples and her daughters-in-law like staff. But $800? Carter loves his mother, but he's cheap. He usually gets her a gift card to a spa and calls it a day. Theory 3. He made a mistake. Probability, 0. You don't accidentally spend nearly $900 on jewelry. You don't trip and fall and swipe your card at a luxury retailer. I was driving to work on Monday morning, the rain smearing the windshield because Portland in November is basically living inside a car wash, and my mind was still spinning. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned the color of old bone. Why couldn't I just be happy? Why did I have to dissect everything? Because a voice in my head whispered. It was the same voice that tells me a patient is crashing before the monitors even beep. He's not that guy. I tried to focus on the road. I turned up the radio. Some pop song was playing about heartbreak and betrayal. Of course. The universe loves a theme. I changed the station to NPR. Someone was talking about the economy. Better. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was exhausted. I told myself that shifts like the one I just had, where I had to hold a mother's hand while they told her son wasn't coming home, mess with your head. They make you see tragedy everywhere. They make you wait for the other shoe to drop. Maybe this was just a good thing. Maybe he was trying to apologize for being gone so much. He had been traveling to Vancouver constantly for the last 6 months. Regional expansion, he called it. Consulting on the new merger. He would come home tired, smelling of hotel soap, and fall into bed. Maybe he missed me. Maybe the distance made him realize he needed to step up. By the time I pulled into the employee parking garage, dodging a puddle the size of Lake Michigan, I had almost convinced myself. I was the problem. I was the cynic. I needed to be a better wife, a more trusting partner. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked tired. My red hair was pulled back in a messy bun that was more mess than bun. I had dark circles under my eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. Get it together, Evelyn, I said to the mirror. He bought you jewelry. Stop acting like he bought a gun. 3 days later, the universe decided to stop whispering and start screaming. It was November 11th, a Monday. I was on a break, sitting in the break room which smelled of burnt popcorn and despair. I was eating a yogurt that expired 2 days ago because I hadn't had time to go grocery shopping. I opened the bank app again. It was a compulsion now, like picking a scab. New charges. The screen refreshed, the little spinning wheel mocking me, and there they were. Bliss Spa Vancouver, $620. The Gilded Fork, $380. My spoon dropped into the yogurt container with a wet plop. The sound seemed deafening in the quiet room. The gilded fork. I stopped breathing. The air in the room suddenly felt very thin, like I was at high altitude. The Gilded Fork wasn't just a restaurant, it was our restaurant. It was the place in the Pearl District where we went for every single anniversary. It was where Carter had proposed to me 9 years ago, getting down on one knee between the appetizer and the main course, his hands shaking as he held out the ring. It was sacred ground. You don't take a client to the Gilded Fork. You don't take a buddy to the Gilded Fork. It is intimate. It is romantic. It is expensive. And he had been there last night, Sunday night. I closed my eyes and tried to remember where I was on Sunday night. I didn't have to try hard. I was in Trauma Bay 2, helping a doctor reduce a dislocated shoulder on a guy who had fallen off a roof while trying to hang Christmas lights in November. I'd spent 12 hours on my feet, covered in other people's bodily fluids, while my husband was eating duck confit at our special place. "Hey, Evelyn, you okay?" I snapped my eyes open. It was Sarah, one of the other nurses. She was looking at me with that professional concern we all wear like armor. "Yeah," I said. My voice sounded rusty, like I hadn't used it in years. "Yeah, just headache, dehydration, you know." "Drink some water," she said, nodding sagely before grabbing her lunch from the fridge. "Don't let the place kill you." Too late, I thought. I looked at the phone again. $600 at a spa? Carter doesn't spa. He thinks massages are awkward and facials are a scam. He once waited in the car for an hour while I got a pedicure because the smell of the salon gave him a headache. So who got the massage? Who ate the duck confit? The logic loop shattered. There was no way to rationalize this. There was no Costco gift basket explanation for a spa day and a $300 dinner on a Sunday night when he told me he was catching up on emails at his hotel in Vancouver. He wasn't in Vancouver. The Gilded Fork is in Portland. He was here, in the city, while I was working. A cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. It wasn't butterflies anymore. It was a stone, a heavy, jagged stone of realization. He was lying. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I thought I might actually be sick right there on the break room table. I pushed the yogurt away. I looked at the time. My break was over in 10 minutes. I had 10 minutes to fall apart, put myself back together, and go save lives. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay." I didn't cry. That's the thing about working in the ER. You learn to delay your reaction. You can't cry when a patient is bleeding out. You cry in the car on the way home. You cry in the shower. You do not cry in the break room. I took a deep breath, held it for 4 seconds, and let it out. I needed information. I didn't need tears. I needed data. I walked out of the break room and found a quiet corner in the hallway near the supply closet. It was the only place in the hospital where you could get a cell signal and a modicum of privacy. I switched modes. I turned off wife. I turned off Evelyn. I turned on triage nurse. When you triage a patient, you are cold. You are calculating. You ask questions not to be polite, but to determine survivability. I dialed the number for the Gilded Fork. I knew it by heart. "Thank you for calling the Gilded Fork. This is Marcus. How may I help you?" "Hi, Marcus," I said. My voice was bright, chipper, efficient. It was the voice of a woman who organizes calendars and orders lattes. "This is Jessica calling from Carter Marshall's office. How are you today?" "I'm well, Jessica. What can I do for you?" "So sorry to bother you," I laughed, a light, airy sound that made me want to punch myself in the throat. "Mr. Marshall thinks he might have left his credit card there last night. He was dining with a client? We're just trying to track it down before we cancel it." "Oh, let me check the lost and found. One moment." I leaned my head against the cool cinder block wall. I watched a gurney wheel past. A man with a bandaged head was staring at the ceiling. I felt a strange kinship with him. We were both injured. His wounds were just visible. Marcus came back on the line. I'm not seeing a credit card, Jessica, but I do see a note here from the server. They were at table 7. Table 7. The corner table. The proposal table. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted copper. Right, table 7, I said. Did they mention finding anything else? Maybe a scarf? The client he was with, she thinks she might have left a scarf. I was fishing. I was casting a line into the dark water, praying I wouldn't catch anything, knowing I would. Let me ask the hostess who was on last night. She's just coming in. Hang on. The hold music was jazz, smooth, chaotic jazz. It sounded like a mockery. Hi, Jessica. Marcus was back. So the hostess remembers them. She said no scarf was left behind, but she remembers the blonde lady leaving a sunglasses case. We have a black sunglasses case here. Blonde, I repeated. The word felt like a slap. Yes, the blonde woman he was with. Very tall? She left a black case. I am 5'4". I have hair the color of a shiny new penny. I have never been blonde in my life. Okay, I said. My voice wavered, just for a fraction of a second before I locked it back down. Okay, great. I'll let him know. Thank you so much, Marcus. You're a lifesaver. I hung up. A blonde, a tall blonde. I stared at the phone. It looked innocent, just a piece of glass and metal, but it had just delivered a death sentence to my marriage. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone. I just stood there staring at a cart full of saline bags. He took a tall blonde to our table. He spent $380 on her. He bought her jewelry. The pieces were falling into place, creating a picture so ugly I wanted to close my eyes, but I couldn't. I checked my watch. Break over. I put the phone in my pocket. I smoothed down my scrubs. I walked back into the ER. Room 3 needs a line started, the charge nurse shouted as I walked past. On it, I said, and I was. I started the IV. I drew the blood. I charted the vitals. I functioned. Because that's what we do. We function while the world burns down around us. I held it together for 6 more hours. I was a machine. I was the perfect nurse. But the moment I got into my car at the end of the shift, the dam cracked. I drove home in silence. No radio, no podcasts, just the sound of the tires on the wet pavement and the roaring in my ears. When I got home, Carter wasn't there. He was still in Vancouver. Or maybe he was in the Pearl District with the blonde. Or maybe he was on the moon. It didn't matter. I walked into the kitchen. The silence of the house wasn't peaceful anymore. It was oppressive. It felt like the house knew. The walls were judging me. You stupid woman, they seemed to say. You worked while he played. I dropped my bag on the floor. I looked at the stove. There was a grease splatter from 3 days ago that I hadn't had the energy to clean. Suddenly, that grease splatter was the enemy. I didn't just want to clean it. I wanted to annihilate it. I grabbed the sponge. I grabbed the heavy-duty degreaser. I didn't put on gloves. I needed to feel the burn. I started scrubbing. Stupid, I hissed, scrubbing a circle into the enamel. Stupid, stupid, stupid. I scrubbed until the grease was gone, but I didn't stop. I scrubbed the clean metal. I scrubbed the backsplash. I scrubbed the grout lines between the tiles until my fingernails scraped against the rough cement. My breath was coming in short, jagged gasps. It wasn't crying. It was rage. Pure, unadulterated, white-hot rage. I thought about the $800. Scrub. I thought about the blonde. Scrub. I thought about him looking me in the eye and lying about his flight schedule. Scrub. I moved to the counters. I threw the toaster into the cabinet with a crash. I wiped down the granite until it squeaked. My hands were red and raw. The chemicals were stinging my skin, biting into the cuticles. Good. The pain was focusing. The pain was real. The pain in my chest was a nebulous, suffocating cloud, but the pain in my hands was sharp and defined. I could handle sharp and defined. I ended up on the floor, scrubbing the baseboards with a toothbrush. I was sweating. My hair was falling out of its clip. I must have looked like a maniac. "I am not a victim," I said out loud. I scrubbed harder. "I am not a victim." I said it like a mantra. I said it until the words lost their meaning and just became sounds. Finally, I sat back on my heels. The kitchen was gleaming. It smelled of bleach and lemon. My hands were trembling. I looked at my reflection in the oven door. I looked wild. "Okay," I said. My breathing was slowing down. "Okay, you're done." I stood up. My knees popped. I felt lighter, in a terrifying way. The sadness had been burned off, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't going to cry anymore. Crying was for people who had hope. I didn't have hope. I had a mission. 2 days passed. I existed in a state of hypervigilance. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach dropped. It happened again on November 14th. I was at home, actually on a day off, trying to read a book, but mostly just staring at the same page for 40 minutes. Buzz. I grabbed the phone. Macy's. $540. "Really?" I said to the empty room. "Macy's, you're branching out." $540. That's a lot of clothes, or perfume, or whatever else you buy a mistress to keep her happy while your wife pays the mortgage. This time, I didn't hesitate. I didn't need to psych myself up. I dialed Macy's customer service immediately. "Thank you for calling Macy's. This is Brenda." "Hi, Brenda," I said. My voice was smooth, polished. "This is Evelyn Marshall. My husband Carter just made a purchase, but I'm worried he might have shipped it to his office by mistake. We're trying to track a package." "Oh, sure thing, honey. Let me pull that up for you." "Can verify the last 4 of the card?" 0922, I said. I knew the numbers better than my own Social Security number. "Okay, got it. Looks like that order was placed just now." "Great. Can you confirm the delivery address? I just want to make sure it's coming to the house, not the office. We're having issues with the mail room there." "Let's see here." "Nope. Looks like it's going to a residential address, 402 Pearl District Lofts." I froze. I grabbed a pen in the back of an envelope. "Sorry, could you repeat that number?" 402 Pearl District Lofts, apartment 42. "Right," I said, writing it down. My handwriting was jagged. "Apartment 42, Pearl District Lofts, and that's in Portland?" "Yes, ma'am, Portland, Oregon." "Okay, thank you, Brenda. That's actually the correct address. My mistake. Glad to help. Have a great day." I hung up and stared at the envelope. The Pearl District Lofts. We live in a house. We live in a craftsman house in a neighborhood full of families and dogs. We do not live in a trendy loft in the Pearl District. He wasn't just staying in hotels. He wasn't just having dinners. He had a place, or she had a place, and he was furnishing it. I walked over to the computer. My hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped. I typed Pearl District Lofts into the search bar. The website loaded. Sleek, modern, concrete floors, floor-to-ceiling windows. The kind of place where people drink espresso and don't own clutter. It was the opposite of our life. It was the opposite of me. "Apartment 42, I whispered. I had a name, or a description anyway. The Blonde. I had a location. Pearl District Lofts. I had a timeline. November. I wasn't just a suspicious wife anymore. I was an investigator, and I was about to close this case. I looked at the clock. It was 2 p.m. Carter wouldn't be back from Vancouver until tomorrow. I grabbed my keys. I grabbed my coat. I wasn't going to wait. I was going to see exactly what $540 of Macy's merchandise looked like walking through the door of apartment 42. I parked my Subaru 3 blocks away from the Pearl District Lofts. My hands were shaking, not from cold, but from the cocktail of adrenaline and caffeine coursing through my veins. I felt ridiculous. I felt like a stalker in a bad Lifetime movie, but I couldn't go home. Going home meant sitting on the couch and waiting for my husband to lie to me. Sitting here, in the rain, watching the entrance of a building I couldn't afford, felt like the only honest thing I had done in days. I waited. I watched the heavy glass doors open and close. A guy in a suit walked out. A woman walking a French bulldog walked in. Then a delivery truck pulled up. A brown UPS truck, idling loudly in the loading zone. The driver hopped out carrying a package. A package from Macy's? Maybe. It was the right size. I watched him walk to the call box. I rolled down my window, straining to hear, but the street noise was too loud. He pressed a button. He waited. He spoke into the intercom. Then the door buzzed. He went inside. I chewed on my thumbnail until I tasted iron. I needed a name. An apartment number wasn't enough. I needed to know who she was. 10 minutes later, the door opened again. The driver left. But then, right behind him, a woman walked out. She was tall, blonde. She was wearing a beige trench coat that looked effortlessly chic, the kind that costs half a paycheck. She had sunglasses on, even though it was overcast. My stomach dropped through the floorboards of the car. It was her. I didn't know how I knew, but I knew. It was the way she carried herself, confident, shiny, new. She looked like everything I wasn't. She looked like someone who didn't spend 12 hours a day wiping vomit off hospital gurneys. I fumbled for my phone. I tried to take a picture, but my fingers were clumsy. I managed to get a blurry shot of her profile as she turned the corner, heading toward a coffee shop. I didn't follow her. I couldn't. If she saw me, a frantic, red-headed woman in scrubs spying from a Subaru, the game would be over. Carter would know. I drove home. The drive was a blur. When I got inside, I ran to my laptop. I didn't go to LinkedIn immediately. I went to the Marshall Consulting website, Carter's company. If she was the work trip, she might be a colleague. I clicked on Our Team. I scrolled past the partners, past the senior consultants, and there, in the marketing and support section, was a face that stopped my heart. Lacey Vance, social media coordinator. The photo was professional, retouched, perfect, but it was the same woman. Same blonde hair, same jawline. I opened a new tab, LinkedIn. I searched for Lacey Vance. Her profile popped up. Social media coordinator at Marshall Consulting. I scrolled down to her employment history. Started March 2024. 8 months ago. I did the math. The late nights started in April. The Vancouver trips ramped up in May. She wasn't just a random woman. She was his employee. I sat back in my chair, the air leaving my lungs in a rush. This wasn't just adultery. This was a lawsuit waiting to happen. This was HR violations. This was messy. I looked at her About section, passionate about storytelling and brand synergy. I felt a laugh bubble up in my throat, a hysterical, jagged sound. Brand synergy. Is that what they called sleeping with the boss? I printed the page. The printer whirred and clicked, a comforting mechanical sound in the silent house. I printed her profile. I printed the Our Team page. I had a face. I had a name. I had a start date. Now I needed a lawyer. Patricia Huang's office did not look like the law offices on TV. It didn't have mahogany desks or views of the skyline. It was in a strip mall next to a dentist's office, and it smelled faintly of peppermint and old paper. But Patricia herself was terrifying. She was a small woman, maybe 60, with glasses on a chain and eyes that looked like they had seen every possible way a human being could betray another human being. I sat across from her, clutching a folder full of bank statements and the blurry photo of Lacey. "So," Patricia said, not looking up from the papers I had handed her, "he's cheating. You know who she is. You have financial records." "Yes," I said. My voice sounded small. I don't know what I want. I want to ruin him." Patricia took off her glasses and looked at me. "Honey, revenge is expensive. Justice is expensive. Divorce is a business transaction. If you want to ruin him emotionally, go to a therapist. If you want to ruin him financially, listen to me." She pulled a yellow legal pad toward her. "Oregon is a no-fault state," she said. her pen hovering over the paper. That means the judge doesn't care that he's sleeping with the social media girl. The judge cares about math. The judge cares about assets. But he spent thousands of dollars, I interrupted. On her. That's my money. That, Patricia said, pointing the pen at me, is dissipation of marital assets. That the judge cares about. If we can prove he used joint funds to facilitate the affair, we can claw that back. We can get you a larger share of the split. She started writing. Here is what you are going to do. You are not going to scream. You are not going to throw his clothes on the lawn. You are going to be a ghost. A ghost? You are going to document everything, every text, every email, every receipt. You are going to let him think he is getting away with it. You are going to let him dig his hole so deep that he can't climb out. I have to pretend? I asked, feeling sick. I have to pretend I love him? You have to pretend you are a statue, Patricia said. If he suspects you know, he will start hiding money. He will start deleting emails. He will burn the paper trail. Do you want that? No? Then you go home. You smile. You cook dinner. And you bring me everything. She pushed a contract across the desk. Retainer is $5,000. I stared at the number. $5,000. That was my emergency fund. That was the money I was saving for a new roof. Do it, I told myself. Think of it as an investment. I pulled out my checkbook. My hand shook as I wrote the date. November 18th. Welcome to the team, Evelyn, Patricia said, taking the check. She didn't smile. Now go home and be a good actress. Carter came home on Wednesday night. I heard his key in the lock and my entire body seized up. I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for a salad I had no intention of eating. The door opened. Honey. I'm home! His voice was cheerful, normal, the voice of a man who hadn't just spent 3 days in a love nest with a 20-something. I forced the muscles in my face to relax. I forced the corners of my mouth up. It felt like I was wearing a mask made of dried clay. Hey, I called out, in the kitchen! He walked in, dropping his suitcase by the door. He looked tired, but in a satisfied way. He smelled of hotel soap and something else. Vanilla? Was that her perfume? He walked over to me. He put his hands on my waist. I wanted to scream. I wanted to turn around and stab him with the paring knife. I wanted to vomit. Instead, I leaned into his touch. I let him kiss my cheek. Missed you, he mumbled into my hair. Missed you too, I lied. The words tasted like ash. How was Vancouver? Exhausting, he said, pulling away and going to the fridge for a beer. Meetings all day. The client is being a nightmare. We're way behind schedule. Oh no, I said, chopping a cucumber with unnecessary force. Does that mean you'll have to go back? Probably, he sighed, popping the top off the bottle. December is going to be brutal. I might have to be there the first week of the month. I looked down at the cutting board. December 2nd through 4th. The dates I had already seen on the tracking info. He was setting the stage. He was preloading the lie. Well, I said, my voice steady, we have the holidays coming up. Make sure you don't burn out. I'm trying, babe. I'm doing this for us, you know? The bonus on this project is going to be huge. For us. He was looking at me with those earnest brown eyes, the eyes I fell in love with, the eyes that were currently lying to my face without even blinking. I know, I said, you work so hard. Later that night in bed, he reached for me. His hand slid across the sheets, finding my hip. Panic flared in my chest, sharp and hot. I couldn't do it. I could fake a smile, but I couldn't fake this. Carter, I whispered, pulling away. I can't. I have a migraine. It's blinding. Oh, he said. He sounded disappointed, but not suspicious. Okay, sorry. Do you need anything? Just sleep, I said. Just let me sleep. He rolled over. 5 minutes later, he was snoring. I lay there in the dark, listening to him breathe, feeling the space between us widen into a canyon. I realized then that Patricia was right. This wasn't a marriage anymore. It was a war zone, and I was behind enemy lines. Thursday morning. I called in sick. I never call in sick. I told the charge nurse I had food poisoning. I drove to a different branch of our bank, one in Beaverton, 20 minutes away. I didn't want to risk running into anyone I knew at our local branch. The bank was quiet. I sat at a desk across from a young man named Jason who looked like he was 12 years old. "I'd like to open a separate checking account," I said, "in my name only." "Sure thing," Jason said, typing happily. "We can link that to your joint profile so you can see everything in one place." "No," I said quickly. "No linking, completely separate. No paper statements, everything digital, and I need a different email address associated with it." Jason stopped typing. He looked at me. He looked at my ring. He knew. I could see it in his eyes. He had probably done this 10 times this week. "Okay," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "We can do that. Private account. Thank you. And the opening deposit?" I reached into my purse and pulled out a cashier's check I had drawn from my personal savings, money I had inherited from my grandmother years ago, money Carter knew about but never touched. $5,000, I said. Jason typed. The keys clacked loudly. "Done. You're all set, Mrs. Marshall." "Do you want a debit card today?" "Yes." I walked out of the bank with a folder tucked under my arm. It felt like I was carrying a grenade. I sat in my car and logged into our joint account on my phone. I needed to do one more thing. I went to the settings. Paperless statements. Carter never checked the mail, but if a bank statement with a Tiffany's charge showed up, he might notice. I needed to control the flow of information. I needed to make sure that I was the only one seeing the damage. I switched everything to my personal email, the one he didn't have the password to. "Checkmate," I whispered, but my hands were still sweating. Thanksgiving, the holiday of gratitude and forced family interaction. We drove to Donna's house in Lake Oswego. It's a massive, sterile house with white carpets that look like they've never been walked on. Carter drove. He was in a good mood, whistling along to the radio. I was staring out the window, mentally rehearsing my lines. Smile, nod, eat the turkey, don't stab your husband. We pulled into the driveway. Donna was already at the door. My mother-in-law is a woman who believes that passive aggression is a love language. She hugged Carter like he was a returning war hero. "Oh, my baby," she squealed. "You look so thin. Is Evelyn feeding you?" Then she turned to me. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. It never does. "Evelyn," she said, giving me a stiff air kiss near my ear. "You made it." "Happy Thanksgiving, Donna," I said, holding out the bottle of wine I had brought. "This is for you." She took it, glanced at the label, and gave a tiny sniff. "Oh, Pinot Noir. How robust. Thank you." She ushered us inside. "You look tired, dear," she said, lowering her voice as we walked down the hall. "Are those new wrinkles around your eyes? Or just the lighting?" "It's the hospital lighting, Donna," I said, keeping my tone sweet. "Saving lives is exhausting work." "Well," she said, patting my arm, "maybe you should cut back. Carter is doing so well, isn't he? It's not like you need to work so hard." The implication hung in the air. My son is successful. You are unnecessary. I smiled. "I like to contribute, Donna. It's good to have my own resources." She missed the subtext completely. She just turned and walked into the living room, her heels clicking on the hardwood like gunshots. The dining room table was set like a photo shoot for a magazine. Heavy silverware, crystal glasses, a centerpiece that was too tall to see over. We were all there, the cast of characters, Donna at the head of the table, Carter to her right, me next to Carter, Richard, Carter's older brother, across from us. Richard is 45, divorced, and bitter about everything, especially Carter's success. Melissa, Richard's ex-wife, who somehow still gets invited because Donna likes to torment her, sat next to him. And Kayla, their 12-year-old daughter, who was wearing headphones around her neck and looking at us like we were aliens. "Let's go around the table and say what we're thankful for," Donna announced, pouring herself a glass of wine that was definitely not the one I brought. "I'm thankful for my promotion," Carter said, beaming, "and for this family." "I'm thankful for wine," Richard grumbled. "I'm thankful I passed math," Kayla said, not looking up from her phone. "I'm thankful," I said, looking directly at Carter, "for the truth and for clarity." Carter squeezed my hand under the table. "That's beautiful, honey." He had no idea. Dinner started. The turkey was dry. The conversation was drier. I watched Carter. He wasn't eating much. His phone was in his lap under the napkin. Every few minutes I saw the blue glow illuminate his crotch. He was texting. "Who are you talking to?" I asked, keeping my voice low so Donna wouldn't hear. He jumped. "What? No one. Just work emails. Checking the Vancouver schedule." "On Thanksgiving?" I asked. "Crisis management, babe. You know how it is." I knew exactly how it was. I took a sip of water. I looked across the table at Melissa. She caught my eye. She looked at Carter, then at his phone, then back at me. She gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. She knew, or she suspected. Melissa had been cheated on by Richard 5 years ago. She knew the signs. She knew the phone under the napkin move. I felt a sudden rush of solidarity with this woman I barely knew. I looked back at Carter. He was typing again. A small smile played on his lips. He was texting Lacey. He was probably telling her he missed her. He was probably telling her his wife was boring. I gripped my fork. I imagined jamming it into his hand. "Evelyn, you're not eating," Donna called out from the head of the table. "Is the stuffing not to your liking? I know you prefer that box stuff." "It's delicious, Donna," I said. "I'm just saving room for dessert." I wasn't hungry. I was feeding on something else now. I was feeding on the absolute certainty that I was going to destroy him. "Carter," I said, a little louder this time. "Pass the potatoes, please." He didn't hear me. He was staring at his lap. "Carter!" Donna barked. He snapped his head up. "What? Sorry, yes, potatoes." He handed me the bowl. His hand brushed mine. His skin felt clammy. "Thanks," I said. I took the potatoes. I put a scoop on my plate, and I decided that this was the last Thanksgiving I would ever spend at this table. Next year, I would be somewhere else, somewhere honest. But first, I had to burn this table down. Dessert at Donna's house was always a production. She brought out a pumpkin pie that she claimed was homemade, even though I had seen the Costco packaging in the recycling bin on my way in. We were standing by the buffet table, the air thick with the smell of cinnamon and unspoken resentments. I watched Carter pick up a dessert plate. He looked relaxed. His shoulders were down. He had survived dinner without his wife making a scene, and he thought he was in the clear. He thought I was just the tired, overworked nurse who was grateful for a slice of pie. He was wrong. I wasn't grateful. I was hunting. "So," I said, sliding a knife into the pie crust. The sound was a crisp, satisfying crunch. "You mentioned December is going to be crazy?" He nodded, mouth full of whipped cream. "Yeah, nightmare. I have to go back up north." "Vancouver again?" I asked. I kept my eyes on the pie. I didn't look at him. If I looked at him, he might see the predator in my eyes. "Seattle, actually," he said. He swallowed. "Client has a satellite office there. They want me on site for the rollout." "Seattle," I repeated. "That's close. Maybe I could come up? I have some vacation days." The air in the room seemed to freeze. I watched his throat bob as he swallowed again. Panic. Tiny micro-expressions of panic. His eyes darted to the left, then back to me. "I wouldn't," he said quickly. "Too quickly. It's going to be boring, babe. 12-hour meetings. You'd be sitting in the hotel room all day. Plus, it's just a quick trip, Monday to Wednesday." "Which dates?" I asked, lifting a slice of pie onto a plate. "Just so I can put it on the calendar." "December 2nd through the 4th, he said. I handed him the plate. "December 2nd through 4th. Got it." I smiled. A real smile. Because he had just handed me the shovel I was going to use to bury him. "Shame," I said lightly. I've always wanted to see the Space Needle." "Next time," he said, looking relieved. He took a bite of pie. "This is great, Mom," he called out to Donna. "Next time," I whispered to myself. I walked away from him, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. He lied. He didn't even blink. He looked at his wife of 9 years and lied about where he was sleeping next week. I went into the guest bathroom and locked the door. I leaned against the sink and stared at my reflection. "December 2nd, I said to the mirror. "Let the games begin." We got home around 9. Carter went straight to the shower. He loves long showers. He says it helps him think. I suspect it helps him wash off the guilt. I sat on the edge of the bed. His phone was on the nightstand. It was charging. The little battery icon was green. I knew his passcode, 0412, our anniversary, April 12th. The irony was almost suffocating. I needed to know where he was going, really going. I couldn't rely on him checking in on Facebook or making a mistake with a receipt. I needed real-time data. I picked up the phone. It felt heavy in my hand, warm. I typed in the code, 0412. It unlocked. My thumbs hovered over the screen. I felt like a criminal. I felt dirty. I was invading his privacy. I was breaking the sacred trust of marriage. He broke it first. A voice in my head screamed. He broke it $890 ago. I opened the App Store. I searched for a family locator app, the one that runs in the background, the one you install on your kids' phones so you know they made it to school. I hit download. The little circle spun. I watched the bathroom door. I could hear the water running. I could hear him humming. "Please hurry, please hurry." The app installed. I opened it. "Share location with..." I typed in my phone number. Then the notification popped up. "This device is now sharing its location with Evelyn." This was the dangerous part. The app sends a text message notification to confirm. I waited. 3 seconds. 4 seconds. Buzz. The text arrived at the top of the screen. I swiped it. I opened the messaging app. I deleted the thread. I went to the recently deleted folder and deleted it from there too. I hid the app icon in a folder labeled Utilities, buried on the 3rd page of his home screen, right next to the calculator and the compass app he never used. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. The water in the shower turned off. Panic, cold, and sharp shot through me. I wiped the screen on my pajama pants to remove my fingerprints. I placed the phone back on the nightstand exactly at the angle I found it. I dove into bed and pulled the covers up to my chin. I grabbed a book from the nightstand. I wasn't reading it. It was upside down. The bathroom door opened. Carter walked out, a towel wrapped around his waist, steam billowing out behind him. "Hey," he said, rubbing his hair with a second towel. "You okay? You look pale." "Just tired," I said. My voice sounded thin. "Must be the turkey." "Get some sleep," he said. He walked over to the nightstand. He picked up his phone. I stopped breathing. My heart stopped beating. He looked at the screen. He swiped. He checked his email. He put the phone back down. "Good night, babe," he said, climbing into bed beside me. He didn't see it. He didn't know. I let out a breath I had been holding for 5 minutes. "Good night," I whispered. Now I was the spy in his pocket. Wherever he went, I went. Monday, December 2nd, the day he left for Seattle. I was at work. The ER was a war zone. We had a multi-car pileup on I-5 and a flu outbreak that had filled the waiting room with coughing, miserable humanity. I was distracted. I kept checking my phone. The little blue dot on the map was moving north on I-5. He was actually driving. "Evelyn! Bed 4 needs pain management." Dr. Aris snapped his fingers in front of my face. "Right," I said. "On it." I went to the medication dispensing machine. I typed in the code. I pulled out the vial. Morphine, 2 milligrams. I drew it up into the syringe. My hands were automatic. My brain was on the highway with Carter. I walked into bed 4. The patient was a young guy, maybe 20, with a broken femur. He was screaming. "Here," I said soothingly. This will help. I reached for his IV port. Then I looked at the syringe. Really looked at it. It wasn't 2 milligrams. It was 10. I froze. The needle was an inch from his port. 10 milligrams of morphine for a kid this size could stop his breathing. It could kill him. I had grabbed the wrong vial. I had drawn up the wrong concentration. My blood turned to ice. I pulled the syringe back like it was a snake. "Wait," I said. My voice was trembling. "Wait a second." I stepped back. I looked at the vial in my pocket. 10 milligrams per milliliter. I needed the 2 milligrams per milliliter vial. I had almost killed someone. I had almost killed a patient because I was thinking about my husband and his blonde girlfriend. I walked out of the room. I went to the disposal bin. I wasted the medication. I documented the error as a near miss. I went into the supply closet and slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor. I put my head between my knees. I was hyperventilating. This had to stop. He was taking everything from me, my money, my trust, my dignity. And now he was coming for my career. He was making me dangerous. I couldn't let him do this. I stood up. I wiped my face. "No more," I said to the shelves of gauze and saline. "You don't get to take this." I wasn't just sad anymore. I was furious. Cold, hard, professional fury. I went back out to the floor. I got the right dose. I treated the patient. I was the best nurse in that hospital for the rest of the shift. Because I had to be. Because if I let him win here, I would have nothing left. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of wine and my phone. The blue dot had stopped moving. He wasn't in Seattle. He was in Stevenson, Washington, Skamania Lodge. It's a resort in the gorge. Beautiful, romantic. Outdoor hot tubs, fireplaces in the rooms. It was an hour and a half from Seattle. I zoomed in on the map. The dot was stationary. It was right over the main lodge. "Skamania," I whispered. Classy. It wasn't a business trip. There are no corporate headquarters in Stevenson. There are only trees, a river, and expensive rooms designed for couples. I took a screenshot. Time: 8:42 p.m. Location: Skamania Lodge. Status: lying. I opened a new folder on my laptop. I named it The Seattle Lie. I dragged the screenshot into the folder. I wondered what they were doing. Were they having dinner? Were they in the hot tub? Was he telling her the same jokes he told me on our honeymoon? I felt a phantom pain in my chest, like a rib had cracked. It wasn't the sex. The sex I could almost understand. People get bored. People get lonely. It was the intimacy. It was the fact that he was taking her to places that required planning. He booked a room. He drove her there. He was building memories with her. I was just the logistical support. I was the person who paid the mortgage so he had a place to keep his clothes between trips. I closed the laptop. I couldn't look at the dot anymore. I went to the window and looked out at the rain. It was pitch black outside. "Enjoy the view, Carter," I said. "It's going to cost you half your 401k. Tuesday, December 3rd. The phone buzzed again. Victoria's Secret. $280. I was in the hospital cafeteria eating a salad that tasted like wet cardboard. I stared at the notification. $280. That wasn't just a bra. That was a set. That was silk. That was lace. That was the very sexy collection. I looked down at my own scrubs. Beneath them, I was wearing beige cotton underwear I bought in a six-pack from Target. Practical, comfortable, the underwear of a wife. He was buying her the fantasy. I felt a wave of humiliation so hot it made my cheeks burn. I felt ugly. I felt old. I imagined Lacey, the tall blonde. She probably looked incredible in whatever he bought. She probably modeled it for him in the hotel room at Skamania Lodge. I wanted to throw my phone into the trash compactor. Instead, I took a screenshot. I opened my email app. I composed a new message to Patricia Huang. Subject: New evidence, dissipation of assets. Attachment: Screenshot vs charge.jpg. Body: Add this to the pile, lingerie, while he's supposed to be in a client meeting. I hit send. I took a bite of my salad. I chewed slowly. Every dollar he spent on her was a dollar he was stealing from our future. That wasn't just lingerie. That was my retirement. That was the vacation we never took. That was the kitchen renovation we put off because money was tight. Money wasn't tight. He was just spending it on someone else's body. I swallowed the lettuce. It tasted bitter. Keep spending, Carter, I thought. Buy her the whole store. The receipt is going to look great in court. Wednesday night. He came home. I heard the garage door open. I was on the couch watching a documentary about cults. It felt appropriate. He walked in carrying his bag and a small paper sack. "Honey, I'm back." He looked happy. He looked flushed. He looked like a man who had just spent 3 days having great sex and eating room service. "Hey," I said, pausing the TV. "How was Seattle?" "Rainy," he said, dropping his bag. "Traffic was a nightmare, but the meetings went well." He walked over and kissed me. He tasted like peppermint gum, trying to cover something up. "I got you something," he said. He handed me the paper sack. I opened it. Inside was a bottle of maple syrup, a small 12-ounce bottle of maple syrup. "From the airport," he said. "Local stuff. Thought you'd like it for pancakes." I held the bottle. It probably cost $12. He spent $280 on her underwear. He spent $12 on my syrup. The math was so brutal it was almost funny. "Wow," I said, forcing my eyes to widen. "Thanks, sweetie. I love maple syrup." "I know," he said, looking pleased with himself. "I missed you." He sat down next to me and put his arm around my shoulders. He pulled me close. "I really missed you," he said again, his voice dropping to that intimate register he uses when he wants something. He was feeling guilty. He was trying to reconnect. He was trying to bridge the gap between his two lives by having sex with his wife. I felt my skin crawl. His hand on my arm felt like a spider, but I couldn't push him away. Not yet. If I pushed him away, he might get suspicious. "I missed you too," I lied. "Let's go upstairs," he whispered. I looked at the bottle of syrup on the coffee table. "Okay," I said. "Just let me put this in the kitchen." I walked into the kitchen. I put the syrup in the pantry, behind the flour. I stood there for a second, gripping the edge of the counter. I had to go upstairs. I had to let him touch me. I had to play the part. This was the price of the long game. This was the cost of the trap. I took a deep breath. I turned off the kitchen light. "Coming," I called out. And as I walked up the stairs, I promised myself that every single second of this fake intimacy was going to cost him. I was adding a surcharge to the divorce settlement for every lie, every touch, every bottle of maple syrup. Saturday morning, December 21st. The countdown to Christmas had officially begun. The house smelled of pine needles and impending doom. Carter was at the gym, or claiming to be at the gym. The tracking app showed him at a 24-hour fitness place in the Pearl District, which was suspiciously close to Lacey's apartment. But I let it go. I had bigger fish to fry. I sat at the kitchen island with my laptop. I needed to confirm the power dynamic. I knew Lacey worked for him, but I needed to know the reporting structure. If she was just a colleague, it was frowned upon. If she reported to him, it was a firing offense. I opened my email. I composed a message to the HR department at Marshall Consulting. I'd met the HR director, a woman named Sharon, at the company picnic 2 years ago. Subject, holiday cards. "Hi, Sharon. Hope you're surviving the season. I'm trying to get our holiday cards out. I know, so late. And I wanted to make sure I included everyone on Carter's direct team. He's so bad with addresses. Could you send me the current team directory so I don't miss anyone? Thanks. Evelyn." I hit send. It was wholesome. It was helpful. It was the act of a supportive wife. 20 minutes later, Sharon replied, "You are a saint, Evelyn. Carter is lucky to have you. Attached is the updated directory." I opened the PDF. My heart was thumping a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I scrolled down. Marketing and Brand Strategy. Team. Director, Carter Marshall. Senior Consultant, David Chen. Social Media Coordinator, Lacey Vance, reports to C. Marshall. There it was, in black and white. Reports to C. Marshall. He was her direct supervisor. He wrote her performance reviews. He approved her expenses. He probably approved the business trip to Skamania Lodge. I leaned back in my chair. The air in the kitchen felt suddenly very clear. This wasn't just an affair anymore. This was a career suicide pact. Corporate America has rules, strict rules. You cannot sleep with the person whose salary you control. It opens the company up to lawsuits. It's a liability nightmare. I saved the PDF. I saved it to the cloud. I saved it to a flash drive. I emailed it to Patricia. "You idiot," I whispered. "You arrogant idiot." He thought he was untouchable. He thought the rules didn't apply to him because he brought in revenue. But HR doesn't care about revenue when the lawsuit risk exceeds the profit margin. I felt a dark, cold satisfaction spreading through my chest. I wasn't just going to divorce him, I was going to get him fired. I needed the handbook. I needed the exact wording. I went up to the attic. It was freezing up there. I dug through the boxes labeled Carter Work. Old tax returns, college textbooks, and finally, a dusty binder from his onboarding 5 years ago, Marshall Consulting Employee Handbook. I took it downstairs. I made a cup of tea. I sat down and started reading. Page 42. Section 7, Code of Ethics and Conduct. Subsection B, Fraternization. Employees in supervisory roles are strictly prohibited from engaging in romantic or sexual relationships with subordinates who report to them, directly or indirectly. Failure to disclose such relationships immediately to human resources is grounds for immediate termination for cause. Immediate termination for cause. That was the magic phrase. For cause meant no severance package, no golden parachute, no unemployment benefits. If I played this right, Carter would walk away from this marriage with half the debt and zero income. I took a photo of the page. I heard the garage door open. He was back. I slammed the binder shut and shoved it under the sofa cushions. My heart rate spiked. I felt like a teenager hiding a diary. Carter walked in looking sweaty and pumped. He actually had been at the gym, or at least he had done enough push-ups in Lacey's living room to break a sweat. "Hey, babe," he said, grabbing a water from the fridge. "What are you doing?" "Just reading," I said, picking up a magazine I hadn't looked at in 3 months. "Relaxing." "Must be nice," he said, wiping his forehead. "I've been grinding. Gotta stay in shape for the new year. Big things coming." "Huge things," I agreed. "You have no idea." He looked at me, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. But then he smiled, that dismissive, comfortable smile. "You're weird today," he said, and walked upstairs to shower. I pulled the binder out from under the cushion. I kissed the cover. "Big things indeed," I whispered. Sunday, December 22nd. Carter was in the shower again. He really was the cleanest adulterer in Portland. His laptop was sitting on the dining room table. It was open, but the screen was locked. I had tried to get into it before, but he changed his passwords every 90 days. Corporate policy. I walked over to it. The fan was whirring softly. I looked at the password prompt. Hint. Important date. I stared at it. Important date. I tried his birthday. 0815. Incorrect password. I tried Lacey's birthday? No, I didn't know it, and he wasn't that stupid. Was he? I tried the day he got promoted. 0601. Incorrect password. I paused. I listened to the water running upstairs. I had maybe 5 minutes. Think, I told myself. He's a narcissist, but he's also lazy. He wants a password he can remember easily. Important date. Our wedding anniversary? No, that was the code for his phone. He wouldn't use the same one. Security risk. What about his anniversary with the company? The day he started. The day he became Carter Marshall Consultant. I racked my brain. 5 years ago. September? Yes. September 1st. I typed 0901. Incorrect password. My hands started to sweat. The water upstairs turned off. Panic. Pure cold panic. One more try, I whispered. Important date. What if it was us? Not the wedding. The day we met? No, too sentimental. Wait, the day he bought the Porsche. The used Boxster he loved more than me. He bought it 2 years ago, July 4th. He made a joke about Independence Day. I typed 0704. Incorrect password. Damn it, I hissed. I was about to close the lid when I thought of one more thing. The date he met Lacey, March 4th. The day she started. He wouldn't. That was too brazen. That was too sick. I typed 0304. The screen went black for a second. Then the desktop appeared. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. He used the day he met his mistress as his computer password. It was so disrespectful, so casually cruel, that I actually gasped. I didn't have time to be hurt. I navigated to his email client. I searched Lacey. Hundreds of emails popped up. I plugged in my flash drive. I started dragging folders. Personal. Project Alpha. That sounded suspicious. Expenses. I copied everything. The progress bar crawled across the screen. Copying down 45%. I heard footsteps upstairs. "Evelyn," he called out, "have you seen my blue hoodie?" "In the dryer," I shouted back. My voice was steady, but my knees were shaking. Copying 80%. The footsteps moved toward the stairs. "Come on," I begged the machine. "Come on," copying 99%. Complete. I yanked the drive out. I closed the lid. I stepped away from the table just as Carter walked into the room. "Found it," he said, holding the hoodie. "Thanks." "No problem," I said, clutching the flash drive in my pocket. The plastic bit into my palm. "I'm going to grab some coffee," he said, walking past the laptop. "Do you want anything?" "No," I said. "I have everything I need." I waited until he left to run errands. Then I sat down with the flash drive and a glass of wine. I needed the alcohol. I opened the folder labeled Personal. It wasn't just logistics. It wasn't just meet me at the hotel. It was a transcript of the death of my marriage. From Lacey to Carter. Date October 12th. Subject, ugh. Is she still talking about the hospital? God, she sounds like such a drag. Nurse Ratched needs to chill. From Carter to Lacey. Date October 12th. Subject, ugh. Tell me about it. She's saintly but exhausting. No imagination. That's why I need you. You make me feel alive. She just makes me feel tired. I read that line 3 times. She just makes me feel tired. I worked 12-hour shifts to pay off his student loans. I managed the house. I cooked his meals. And I made him feel tired. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and stinging. Not tears of sadness, tears of humiliation. They were laughing at me. I wasn't just the betrayed wife, I was the punchline. I scrolled further. From Lacey to Carter. Date November 1st. Subject, the roommate. So did the roommate notice the charges, or is she too busy saving lives to look at a bank statement? From Carter to Lacey. Date November 1st. Subject, the roommate. She never checks. She trusts me implicitly. It's almost sad. I slammed the laptop shut. I couldn't read anymore. I stood up and paced the kitchen. The rage was a physical thing now, a creature living inside my chest, clawing to get out. "Sad?" I said to the empty room. "I'll show you sad. Sad is going to be you living in a studio apartment eating ramen noodles at 40 years old." I went back to the computer. I forwarded the emails to Patricia. Subject, the smoking gun. Body, they mock me. Use this. Use all of it. I didn't feel like a victim anymore. Victims are helpless. I wasn't helpless. I was armed. Monday, December 23rd. 2 days before Christmas. I was at the grocery store buying the prime rib for Christmas dinner. It cost $120. I put it in the cart, thinking about how Carter would enjoy it while I secretly plotted his demise. My phone buzzed. A bank notification. Transfer alert, $5,000 transferred from joint savings to external account, ending in 449. I stopped in the middle of the aisle. A woman with a cart full of wrapping paper swerved around me, glaring. $5,000. That was a significant chunk of our liquidity. He wasn't just buying gifts. He was moving money. He was preparing for something. Was he leaving? Was he planning to serve me with papers after Christmas? Panic flared. If he drained the accounts before I filed, it would be a nightmare to get it back. We would have to litigate every penny. He was stealing from me. Again. I abandoned the cart. I walked out of the store. I sat in my car and called Patricia. He just moved $5,000, I said the second she picked up. He's draining the account. Okay, calm down, Patricia said. Her voice was sharp, professional. Where did it go? External account. Probably his personal one. Patricia, if he takes everything, he won't, she said, because you're going to strike first. What? If you file on January 2nd, the freeze order goes into effect then. But right now, the money is joint property. He can take it. But so can you. My heart hammered. What are you saying? I'm saying secure your assets, Evelyn. If you think he's dissipating funds, you have a right to protect your share. Take half. Move it to your separate account. Today. Is that legal? It's a gray area, Patricia admitted. But it looks a lot better to a judge if we say, my client secured 50% to prevent the husband from stealing it, rather than, my client has $0 because her husband took it all. Do it. Now. I hung up. I opened the banking app. My hands were shaking so hard I kept hitting the wrong keys. I looked at the balance. $28,000 remaining in savings. He had taken $5,000. If I took half of what was left, that was $14,000. No, I thought. He took $5,000. He already has $5,000. I did the math. The angry, vindictive math. I typed in $15,000. Transfer to Evelyn Personal, the secret account. I stared at the submit button. This was it. This was the declaration of war. Once I pressed this, there was no going back. He would see the notification. He would know, but he wouldn't know why. He would think, what? That I was shopping? That I was moving money for tax reasons? He wouldn't confront me. He was a coward. He would wait, and by the time he realized what had happened, it would be Christmas morning. For the roommate, I whispered. I pressed the button. Transfer successful. The balance dropped. $13,000 left. I felt a rush of adrenaline that was almost sexual. It was power, pure, unadulterated power. I had my war chest, I had my evidence, I had my dignity. I drove back to the grocery store. I walked back in, found my abandoned cart, and added a bottle of expensive champagne. I was going to celebrate, quietly. When I got home, Carter was in the living room, looking at his phone. He looked pale. Everything okay? I asked, putting the groceries on the counter. Yeah, he said, his voice tight. Just bank alert, weird charge. Oh, I said, unpacking the prime rib. Fraud? Maybe, he said. He didn't look at me. I'll handle it. Don't worry about it. He was scared. He thought I had been hacked. Or maybe, just maybe, he was starting to realize that the roommate wasn't as asleep at the wheel as he thought. Okay, honey, I said, putting the champagne in the fridge. You handle it. You're so good with money. I smiled at his back. Tick-tock, Carter, I thought. Tick-tock. Monday night. Carter was in the shower again, his third of the day. Guilt apparently requires a lot of hot water. I was in the guest room, the door locked, sitting on the floor surrounded by a sea of paper. This wasn't just wrapping a gift, this was constructing a bomb. I had bought a beautiful box from a stationery store downtown. It was deep red, sturdy, with a magnetic closure. It looked expensive. It looked like it held a cashmere sweater or a designer handbag. I began the assembly. I felt like a surgeon, or perhaps a coroner. Layer 1, the financials. I placed the printed bank statements at the bottom. I had used a yellow highlighter to mark every single unauthorized transaction. The Tiffany charge, the Bliss Spa, the Gilded Fork, the hotel in Stevenson. The total came to over $4,000 in 8 weeks. I wanted him to see the math first. I wanted him to see the price tag of his betrayal. Layer 2, the betrayal. I laid the photos on top of the statements. The blurry shot of Lacey leaving the apartment, the tracking app screenshots showing him at Skamania Lodge when he said he was in Seattle, the Victoria's Secret receipt next to the maple syrup bottle, the visual evidence that he wasn't just a cheater, he was cheap. Layer 3, the disrespect. This was the layer that hurt the most to print, but felt the best to pack. The emails. Nurse Ratched. The roommate. She just makes me feel tired. I highlighted those phrases in pink. I wanted him to read his own words. I wanted him to see his cruelty staring back at him in 12-point font. Layer 4, the kill shot. The Marshall Consulting Employee Handbook, page 42, open to the fraternization policy. Clipped to it was the company directory showing Lacey reported directly to him. This was the nuclear option. This was the document that turned a divorce into a demolition. And finally, Layer 5, the letter. I had written it on my personal stationery. Dear Carter, I am filing for divorce on January 2nd. You have until January 5th to vacate the premises. I have already secured my share of the assets. Also, I thought HR might be interested in your unique approach to team building, so I sent them a copy of this folder this morning. Merry Christmas. The roommate. I closed the lid. The magnet snapped shut with a satisfying click. I tied a gold ribbon around the box. I tied a perfect bow. It looked innocent. It looked festive. It looked like love. I carried it downstairs and placed it under the tree, right in the front. It sat there, gleaming in the fairy lights, a beautiful red package of destruction waiting for its moment. Tuesday, December 24th. The invasion began at 4 in the afternoon. Donna arrived first carrying a green bean casserole and a bottle of wine that I knew she wouldn't open. She swept into the house in a cloud of perfume and judgment. "Evelyn!" she cried, air-kissing my cheek. "The house looks cozy. Did you not have time to put up the outdoor lights this year?" "I was working, Donna," I said, taking her coat. "Double shifts." "Of course," she sighed, smoothing her sweater. "Always working. Carter tells me he's been so lonely lately. You really should try to prioritize, dear. A man has needs." I smiled. My teeth felt like they might crack from the pressure. "Oh, Carter has been finding ways to occupy his time, Donna. Don't you worry about that." She missed the tone. She always did. She walked into the living room and started critiquing the tree. "A bit sparse on the tinsel, isn't it?" Richard and Melissa arrived next, with Kayla trailing behind them, eyes glued to her phone. Richard looked hungover. Melissa looked exhausted. "Nice spread," Richard grunted, eyeing the charcuterie board I had spent an hour arranging. "Where's the beer?" "Fridge," I said. Carter came downstairs. He was wearing a festive sweater that I had bought him 3 years ago. He looked nervous. He kept glancing at me, then at his phone. He was checking the bank account. He had seen the $15,000 transfer. He hadn't said a word about it, but the sweat on his upper lip told me everything. He was terrified to ask. He was terrified that asking would trigger the explosion. He preferred the silence. "Merry Christmas, everyone," he announced, his voice a little too loud. "Who wants a drink?" "I do," Richard said. "I'll have a white wine," Donna said, settling into the best armchair. "So, Evelyn, tell us, when are you going to give me grandchildren? I'm not getting any younger." I poured her wine. I didn't spill a drop. "I think that ship has sailed, Donna. Carter and I are on different paths these days." Carter froze mid-pour. He looked at me, eyes wide. Different paths? Donna laughed. Oh, stop it. You two are solid. You're just tired. I am tired, I agreed, looking directly at Carter. I am very, very tired. He looked away. He drank his beer in one long swallow. He knew something was coming. He just didn't know it was sitting in the red box 3 feet away from him. That night, lying in bed, the silence was deafening. Carter was asleep. He has the enviable ability to sleep through his own moral decay. He was snoring softly, lying on his back, his arm thrown over his eyes. I lay on the edge of the mattress, staring at the ceiling fan. It was the last time I would sleep next to him, the last time I would hear that snore, the last time I would be Mrs. Marshall in this house. I thought I would be sad. I thought I would be grieving the 9 years we spent building this life. But I wasn't. I felt clean. I realized then that the marriage hadn't died when I found the Tiffany charge. It hadn't died when I saw the emails. It had died years ago, slowly, by 1,000 cuts of indifference. I had been the only one keeping it alive, performing CPR on a corpse. She just makes me feel tired. The words echoed in my head. I'm tired too, Carter, I whispered into the dark, but I'm about to wake up. I looked at the clock. 3 a.m. In 5 hours, I would put on my red dress. In 6 hours, I would destroy his life. I closed my eyes and finally, for the first time in weeks, I slept. Christmas morning broke gray and rainy, typical for Portland. But inside the house, I was bringing the fire. I woke up at 7. I showered. I did my hair in loose waves. I put on makeup, the full works, foundation, contour, red lip, and then the dress. I had bought it last week. It was a deep blood red sheath dress. Tailored, elegant, and lethal. It cost $400. I put it on the credit card he used for Lacey. I walked downstairs. The smell of coffee and cinnamon rolls filled the air. I had made them from scratch. I wanted the house to smell like home before I burned it down. Everyone was up. Donna was in her robe, holding a mug. Richard was asleep on the sofa. Kayla was poking at the presents. Carter looked up when I walked in. His jaw actually dropped. Wow, he said. You look incredible. It's Christmas, I said, smoothing the skirt. Wanted to make an effort. Well, you look expensive, Donna sniffed. Is that new? Yes, I said. Carter bought it for me, indirectly. We gathered around the tree. The tension was palpable. Carter was vibrating with anxiety. He wanted to get this over with. He wanted to know if I knew. Let's do presents, Kayla yelled. Okay, Carter said. He reached under the tree. He pulled out a small, poorly wrapped box. Evelyn first. He handed it to me. The room went quiet. I untied the ribbon. I tore the paper. It was a Fitbit, a rubberized black Fitbit. To help you track your steps at the hospital, he said, smiling weakly. I know you're always on your feet. A Fitbit. He bought lacy diamond earrings and silk lingerie. He bought me a pedometer. Thank you, Carter, I said. My voice was ice. This is exactly what I expected. I thought it was practical, he stammered. Oh, it is, I said. Very practical. I stood up. I walked to the tree. I picked up the red box. It was heavy. I walked over to him. I placed it in his lap. Your turn, I said. This is heavy, Carter said, weighing the box in his hands. He looked at me, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Maybe he thought it was a watch. Maybe he thought I was the fool who bought him forgiveness. Open it, I said. He pulled the gold ribbon. It fell away. He lifted the magnetic lid. The first thing he saw was the letter on top. He picked it up. He read the first line. I am filing for divorce. His face went white. Not pale. White. Like a sheet of paper. What is this? He whispered. Keep reading, I said, and look inside. He dropped the letter. He looked into the box. He saw the highlighted bank statements. Tiffany, Bliss Spa. "Evelyn," he choked out. "Evelyn, wait." "What's wrong?" Donna asked, leaning forward. "Carter? What is it?" "It's his present," I said, my voice clear and loud. "It's a summary of his expenses for the last 8 months. Carter started grabbing the papers, trying to hide them, but his hands were shaking too hard. The photos slid out. The photo of Lacey, the tracking map. "Who is that?" Melissa asked, pointing at the photo of the blonde. "That," I said, pointing a manicured finger, "is Lacey Vance. She's 24. She's his social media coordinator. And she's the reason our savings account is $5,000 lighter." "Lacey?" Richard laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "The girl from the office party? You're banging the intern?" "She's not an intern," Carter shouted. Then he stopped. He realized what he had said. "Oh," Donna said. She put her hand to her throat. "Carter, tell me this isn't true." "It's a misunderstanding," Carter stammered, looking at me with wild eyes. "Evelyn, please, not here, not in front of my mother." "Especially in front of your mother," I said. "She's been so worried about my working too much. I wanted her to know why I work so much. Someone has to pay for your girlfriend's lingerie." I reached into the box and pulled out the Victoria's Secret receipt. I held it up. $280, Donna, on lace underwear, while he bought me a bottle of maple syrup. "Oh, that is low," Melissa said, shaking her head. "That is historically low. I can explain." Carter stood up, the papers scattering on the floor. "There's nothing to explain," I said. "The emails explain it all. The roommate. Nurse Ratched. You think I'm boring, Carter? You think I'm tired? Well, I'm certainly awake now." The room was in chaos. Donna was crying, clutching her pearls. Richard was reading the bank statements and whistling. Kayla was filming it on her phone. "You hacked my computer," Carter yelled, his face turning red. "That's illegal. You stole my data." "And you stole my money," I shouted back. "Marital assets, Carter. Joint funds. You spent $4,000 on a subordinate. Do you know what that is?" I picked up the employee handbook from the box. I threw it at his chest. "That is a firing offense." He froze. The handbook hit him and fell to the floor. "You didn't," he whispered. "You didn't tell HR." "I sent it this morning," I lied. I had scheduled the email to go out at 9:00 a.m. It was 9:05. "Sharon has the whole folder, the expenses, the photos, the directory proving she reports to you. You're done, Carter. You're fired." "You B-word," Donna screamed, standing up. "You ruined his career. How could you? You vindictive little—" "Stop!" I turned on Donna. "He ruined his career. He broke the rules. He broke his vows. Don't you dare put this on me. I kept this house standing for 9 years while he played executive. I'm done." I turned back to Carter. He looked small. He looked defeated. He looked like a man who realized the ground was gone. "Get out," I said. "This is my house," he sputtered. "Read the deed," I said. "I bought it in 2015, before the wedding. My name is on it, only mine. Get out. Now? Right now. Take your mother, take your brother, take your Fitbit. Get out of my house." "But it's Christmas," Donna wailed. "Merry Christmas," I said. "Go celebrate at Lacey's." "I hear she has a nice apartment in the Pearl. Carter paid for the decor." Carter looked at me one last time. He saw the red dress. He saw the cold eyes. He saw the wall he couldn't climb. He turned and walked out. "Come on, Mom," he muttered. They left. It was a parade of misery. Donna crying, Richard shrugging and grabbing a beer for the road. Melissa hugged me on the way out. "Call me," she whispered. "That was legendary." The door closed. The lock clicked. I stood in the silence of the living room. The floor was covered in paper, bank statements, receipts, photos of a life that was over. I picked up the Fitbit from the floor. I threw it into the fireplace. I went to the kitchen. I poured a glass of champagne. I drank it in one gulp. Then I sat down on the sofa and started to laugh. I laughed until I cried, and then I laughed some more. I was alone, and it was the best present I had ever received. March 15th. The crocuses are coming up in the garden. I planted them myself. I am sitting on my back porch, drinking coffee from a mug that doesn't belong to a set. The house is quiet, but it's a good quiet. It's a peaceful quiet. The divorce was finalized last week. Carter didn't fight it. He couldn't. He didn't have the money for a lawyer. Marshall Consulting fired him on January 2nd. Gross misconduct and violation of ethics policy. Patricia told me they were worried about a sexual harassment suit from Lacey, so they cut him loose immediately to limit liability. He lost his severance. He lost his stock options. He is currently living in a studio apartment in Beaverton, working as a junior sales rep for a solar panel company. He calls me sometimes, drunk, leaving voicemails about how he made a mistake. I don't delete them. I save them. They remind me of what I escaped. Lacey lasted 2 weeks. She resigned to pursue other opportunities. I heard from a friend still at the company that she moved back to Ohio to live with her parents. Apparently, the brand synergy wasn't strong enough to survive unemployment. I got promoted to charge nurse. The pay bump covered the legal fees. I repainted the bedroom a soft, dusty blue. I threw out the beige sheets. I ran into Melissa yesterday at the grocery store. She told me that Donna has forbidden anyone from speaking my name. She refers to me only as the Red Witch. I'll take it. I took a sip of coffee and looked out at the yard. The rain had stopped. The sun was breaking through the clouds. I checked my bank account on my phone. Balance healthy. Transactions none. No Tiffany, no Bliss Spa, just me. I smiled. Being the roommate wasn't so bad after all, especially when you get to keep the room. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.